Hi, I'm Len Epp from LeanPub, and in this LeanPub Front Matter podcast, I'll be interviewing Jaime González García. Based in Stockholm, Jaime is a full-stack software developer and UX designer and a popular conference speaker. He works at Google and is currently a front-end software engineer on the Hangouts Meet hardware team, and his duties also include developer relations for people in the developer community in the Nordic countries. You can read his blog and sign up for his newsletter at barbarianmeetscoding.com and follow him on Twitter at Vintheras. And I hope I pronounced that right, but I probably didn't. Jaime is the author of a number of LeanPub books, including JavaScript Mancy, Getting Started, and Boost Your Coding Foo with VSCode and Vim. In this interview, we're going to talk about his background and career, professional interests, his book, and at the end we'll talk a bit about his experience as a self-published author. So thank you for being on the LeanPub Front Matter podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Thanks. I always like to start these interviews by asking people for their origin story. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about where you grew up and how you first became interested in creating software. I know your route wasn't exactly direct.
No. So I was born in a very small village in the north of Spain. It's a small valley, and I think it's about 3,000 inhabitants today. It's surrounded by mountains. It's like a very beautiful nature place. And, I was growing up there, very nice childhood. I was very much a wild kid. I would hang out with my friends outside, herd cows. I remember very vividly my uncle using a scythe to cut the grass. So that was the level. How my childhood was. And then my dad, he was like a very forward thinking man, and you could see that with a couple of things. One was that he put my sister and I in English class when we were like very young. People were like putting people in French back in the day. They thought that French was going to be like the thing to stick, but it wasn't. So my sister and I were very good with English. And then another thing that he did was that he was always buying the latest gadgets, and one of those gadgets was a computer. So that was like the first time that I had a contact with a computer was as a child. I don't know how old I was back then, but I think he bought a weird terminal thingy that you would connect to the internet or something. That didn't cut too much because you couldn't do so much with it. But then he got a PC. I think it was a 286. That was a long time ago, monochrome. And that was like the first time that I used a computer. I remember that he wanted us to succeed, and he would put us to programming class. But again, this is a small town. There's not a lot of opportunities like that, and he would put me to learn BASIC. I was like super young. I don't know how old I was, but I said, all right, let's do it. And I would just be in programming. I didn't even know there was called programming. I think I was so young that I got like some problems I needed to solve, and then I just followed the steps. And I don't know if I was no, I didn't even know what I was doing. But one thing that happened in those classes was that I found a floppy disk of Civilization, and I somehow got it installed in the computer. And then people would be programming BASIC, and I would be playing Civilization. That was a big thing for me when I was a child. I really loved video games. So I traded the cows and the herding for video games. and that was, I spent a lot of my childhood. I mean, I did a lot of things. It was a kid that did a lot of things, play football, basketball, and also, playing video games. And I was also, I had like a slightly obsessive behavior sometimes. So when I found something that I really enjoyed, in this case was Age of Kings or Age of Empires, I would get very obsessed and play a lot and try to become very, very good. And at the time, I think I was like 13 or something like that. And I had this, I led these clans. I think I was one of the highest rated players in Age of Empires back then. And I even did conferences about strategy that you could follow on that. But even though I was playing, I could never connect the dots between the idea that I could program video games or I could program anything. It was just the computers were just fun to me to play with. I did actually created some website back then for the clan, but that was I wasn't very much into programming back then. So time passed, and I wished that I had somebody that had connected the dots for me and told me, yeah, you can do this for a living, programming. You can build your own things. But nobody did, and I just continued with my life. When I went to university, I just left my computer at home. So the first years in university, I didn't even have a computer, and I was very scattered and ambitious back then. So I was in university, and I just spent most of the time with my friends, hanging out. I would like read books like the whole night, and then I couldn't go to school. So it was much later, which I don't know. I had this idea. Sometimes I'm very impulsive, and I had this idea that I would go. This is how it went. I read this book that was called The Fifth Day, and it talked very nice about the Nordic countries. And in this case, it was Trondheim. And then I said, it would be really cool to go there. And then I can do the Erasmus there, which is an exchange program that we have in Europe. And I will finish my degree. And I said, okay. And then I did that. In this case, I moved to Sweden. And what happened there was that I met my wife, my girlfriend back then. And it was through meeting her and falling in love with her and starting a relationship that I after like 10 years of studying, like I'm doing quotes because I don't know what I was doing. I realized that if I wanted to be with her, I needed to get my shit together, finish my degree, and start earning a living so I could maintain myself. And that was when I finished my degree, and that was when I started working as a software engineer. The thing is that, again, we moved back to Spain back then, and I just wanted to pay the rent. I wasn't like super excited about programming, but programming was like on the rise back then, and as it is today, even more. But so the easiest job that I could get was as a programmer, even though my degree was like a super snobbish degree in Spain. It was like the cream of the crop. That a lot of people look down on programming, and I don't know why, because it's awesome. But yeah, it was like, okay, I'm just gonna do anything to earn money so I can pay the rent and so we can live together happily ever after. And then I started working as a software developer, and I was working for a year. And I enjoyed it for the time, but I didn't think that I would end up being a software engineer. It was just like something that I needed to get money to pay the rent and food. And then we moved back to Sweden, my girlfriend and I, and then I had the chance to really reflect, what do I want to do with my life? That was over a summer, and we were living at her parents, and I had throughout those 3 months I was thinking, okay, what am I going to do with my life? I was a telecom engineer, so I was thinking perhaps I will work at Ericsson, designing I don't know, radios, or who knows. But then I started reflecting about what brings me joy in life, and now through reflection there I realized that I really, really, really loved writing software and building things. I mean, I was 27 at the time. It took me a long time. And then when I realized that, this is what I love to do, then I went crazy. It was like, now I'm gonna, it was not like a rational decision. It was just natural reaction. Was just, now I'm gonna dedicate every hour that I have awake to pursue this passion, or this interest, a strong interest that I have. And that was what I did from then on. I've always felt like I've particularly when you look back, you start thinking, "Fuck." Sorry.
No, that's okay.
I wasted so much time. I could have been programming all along. I mean, I chose the wrong degree. I wish somebody had mentored me better. But yeah, it was. I started like from then on, like very strong, pursuing software development. It was so much so that it was funny because this became like an issue over which my wife and I would discuss. We would have discussions because I would feel like I didn't program enough, and she would feel that I would program too much. So there was always this from Jaime that he was completely unambitious, partying all the time, dancing with girls, and that was like a problem. Like I was partying too much. To Jaime, you're coding too much. This was completely different. Yeah.
Thanks a lot for that. I've got a few questions. One of which is it's actually kind of one of the themes of this podcast, because so many people that I interview do work in tech. Is if you were starting out again now, would you go to university and study computer science if you were going to pursue a career in programming, or would you do it another way? Because it sounds like you taught yourself how to program after getting this telecommunications engineering degree.
Yeah. So the telecommunications engineering degree, it included some programming, even though it was not the core thing. But I think that if I could start over, I think I could definitely go to university again, because, it's not just going and learning a subject. When you go to university, it's like a whole experience of coming of age. In my case, was like I was living at my parents' until then, and then going to university was me moving to a new city, and then being independent, independent-ish for the first time in my life, and meeting all new people, getting the chance to like reinvent yourself or also grow into yourself. And there's a lot of travel of journey of self-discovery. So it's like the university is not only like learning how to code or learning trade. It's like all the experiences that you gather throughout those years of living on your own, pursuing knowledge, ideally for the sake of knowledge, but also developing as a person. So I think I would. It's hard to say because that's what I did, and I really enjoyed it. And I don't know what it would be like to not do it. Like, I mean, you could have probably come out of high school and then start working. But I don't know. I really enjoy university. Like, it was I think that one thing that is very nice about university is that I feel like you, particularly if you start working, you have that 9 to 5 or 8 to 5. That's very routine based, and it's more closeting or like limiting in a way. And in university, I feel like it was more like open, and you were able to pursue things in a freer way, and you weren't as closed. So I think that I would definitely recommend it. I know that in the US it can be very expensive, but if you move to Sweden, university is free. So move to Sweden.
Yeah, I've got a question about that that I'd like to ask you in a minute. But just before that, I'd like to say I mean I couldn't agree with you more about the value of spending some years in university. One of the things that I think a lot of people don't sort of put together, particularly if it was just natural for them to go to university because that's what everyone in their family did, is that it expands your range of acquaintance. And on one hand, it sort of demystifies things because you remember partying with that guy who's now a surgeon, and you remember partying with that guy who's now a big-time lawyer or girl. But at the same time, there's just all these sort of very profound practical effects that it has on your life that you can often discount because they seem normal to you. Like, for example, if you find a lump on your back, you can call your doctor friend. If you get called up for jury duty, you can call your lawyer friend and try to get out of it. I mean, I'm just sort of picking tacky examples on purpose, because when you have that resource available to you, when those professions have been demystified for you, you often forget that is not how everyone experiences those issues in life and those people in those professions and things like that. So it definitely has that big impact. But also, just that time to explore and to find out new things and a little bit of time to grow up. But more importantly, and I know I'm going on a bit here, but you brought up just sort of going straight into work and how work can be sort of very rigid. And it's funny because I grew up in a very rural place myself, where people often made a distinction between the real world and university, which always pissed me off, because I'd be like, okay, so here's how, let me describe the real world as you see it. A bell goes off, and at that time I need to be sitting at my desk. A little while later, at around noon, say, I get an hour off to eat. Then I have to be back at my desk for a while, and then at about 5, a bell goes off, and I get to go home, and I don't have to think about it anymore. What does that sound like? I'm being kind of mean about it, but that sounds like being a child in school. And when you go to university, it's all of a sudden, it's never off, because no matter what's happening, you could be doing more to understand your subject. I always like to say that people who say a class is easy is like, it's only as easy as you make it, my friend. If you're finding it easy, then you're not trying hard enough. It gives you this opportunity to challenge yourself and see how far you can go. And imagine if your job involved a 4 to 10 year commitment to be self-directed and assessed in an irreversible way, like on a bi-monthly period for that whole time. You'd be like, wow, that sounds like a really hard job. Anyway, that university can give you that foundation.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. That self-direction that the people, up until then, people normally, how do you say, take you by the hand and guide you. And then when you get to university, they just throw you there, and then it's like, you're free to do what you want.
That, and I've got to say that was for me personally, that was exactly what I loved about it. I loved being on, like, in that sense, kind of on my own, with no one looking over my shoulder, and no one punishes you for not showing up to class.
Yeah, that was a big shock that I had after my long years in university, when I started working, it was like a shock. It was like a complete shock, like from being able to decide how I work, when I work, how I arrange my life, to all of a sudden, I think that in Spain, because now in Sweden there's a little more flexibility, but in Spain it was like very rigid in the sense that you have to come this hour, leave this hour. You normally work extra hours that nobody pays you. So it's like very like that, rigid. And it was like from having so much autonomy to being in a way enslaved. I had like a small crisis. I was thinking, oh, this cannot be life. Life cannot be this for the rest of my life. Yeah.
And so I wanted to ask you a little bit about moving to Sweden. So was that easy? Did you have to do anything, or could you just go because you're in the EU?
Yes, it was the EU thing that makes it very easy. So the first thing was this Erasmus program where you go as an exchange student, and they give you, a stipendium. They give you some money, which doesn't go very far, but the family can help as well. And then, but that was just studying. And then after that, in the EU, you have this thing that you have a free movement of workers. So you can go to any country. And then normally you have 3 months to find a job. And if you get a job, then you get automatic residence or something like that. Probably, I don't know if it's exactly how it works. I think that is it. So what I did was I came here and I started looking for jobs. And I was thinking, my idea was like, this is going to be easy. Because, I know English, Swedish people, all of them, speak perfect English and I, have 1 year of experience as a software engineer, this is going to be easy. And then I busted my face against the wall because I couldn't get a job. So it was, we moved back to the city where we had studied, my wife and I. And for the next 7 months, we were living on my meager savings. Because, in Spain, my first job, I got like 900 euro per month as an engineer. That was like, I worked as a bartender and I earned like 1,200. So as an engineer with a Master of Science, I was earning very, very low salary. So I paid rent, I paid food, and perhaps I saved 100 euros per month. So when I came to Sweden, 2 months they lasted and that was it. So I was living, we were living basically my wife, my girlfriend at the time, she was paying for everything. And I was looking for the job. I sent, I always say like 200 CVs. That's how it felt. And I think I got like 2 interviews. It was horrible. I think that the biggest problem probably was that I didn't speak Swedish at the time. And that was in that area, that was like not as cosmopolitan as Stockholm. People really wanted people that could speak Swedish. And I don't know, perhaps they didn't, my CV didn't inspire trust. I don't know. Perhaps I had like a bad picture. Who knows? But then, so it was tough because 7 months, like looking for a job, and like having your wife, your significant other pay for everything, and that was that period. I used to be a smoker. So I was very addicted to smoking back then, and I couldn't pay me cigarettes. And my wife, of course, she doesn't want me to smoke, so she wouldn't buy me cigarettes. So this isn't something like this. Sounds stupid today, but it was a huge source of discussions for us because you're addicted. So you don't understand that you're addicted. But after 7 months, something like that, there was this person that gave me an opportunity and trusted me, and I went through some interviews and I got a job as a consultant, working on, actually I was about to come to a company as a expert in Python, and I had no clue about Python. But yes, when I got the job, I said, okay, then I'm gonna learn Python. I'm gonna learn everything about Python. I want to get a certification on Python. And then, when I started the job, I think I was at a higher level than the people that were there. So that was good. And I came with a lot of enthusiasm and ideas about how they could re-architect their solution and improve. And I think it went very well. And then from now on, it was easy. It was easy. Yeah. It was the moment that you have like somebody is like seal of approval. Ping. Somebody has hired you in Sweden. Then it is much easier to just get more jobs or like at least interviews. And
I'd like to ask you how you eventually made your way to Google. But before I ask you about that, one of the pleasures of this podcast is that I get to interview writers from all around the world. And one thing I like to ask them is things specific to where they are. And I don't think I've interviewed anyone from living in Stockholm before.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, what's the startup scene like there?
Okay, so I think that the startup scene is amazing, but I've never been a part of it. So this my background is in .NET development, so that's enterprise, and you have these two universes coexisting, but they never touch each other. So a startup scene is super huge. We have a lot of incubators. I meet these people in meetups. So if you go to Stockholm, yes, if you go to different meetups, you will meet these people. But normally, since my background was .NET, I normally hang out with these other people, that is enterprise, big consulting firms, helping big companies, big established companies. But other than that, you have awesome startups and unicorns and yeah.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So speaking of big established companies, on to my next question. How did you? So you've had this really interesting journey, and you ended up at one of the biggest, most established companies in the world. How did you end up at Google? Did they grab you from somewhere, or did you approach them?
They grabbed me. So this was, it's very funny because I remember going to work in Linköping. That was a city where I lived before with my wife, and this in the I guess in middle south of Sweden. That was a university city, somewhat small. It's big for Swedish standards, but it's small. And I was listening to this book. It was In the Plex. It's a book by I don't know if it's Stephen Levy or it's a tech writer. And the book is about, I don't know if you've read it, but it's about the origins of Google and how Google came to be, and Google ideals and all of those things. I remember thinking, it would be so awesome to work at Google, but that's never going to happen. And I remember that a lot. And then what happened was that I've never thought about like career advance. That's not something that I think about. I just love developing software, and I always focus on just code and creating things and having fun and learning and improving my craft. Those are the things that concern me. And then I've been working at different companies, meeting people in meetups and sometimes talking at conferences, meetups, so those things, developing things, creating things in my free time, doing side projects. And I've been moving from company to company when it made sense. Like perhaps you work in a company and you don't enjoy working there because their practices may not be very good and they are not keen on changing them. People in your team, they're not excited about software development as much as you are. And then you meet other people in other companies that you click better with, and they talk with you about their company and all this stuff. And this is a natural way of moving companies, which is funny because I've moved more company because I knew people there than because anything else. So people are important. And then doing my things. I think it was January 2016. I came from, we spent Christmas in the north. My wife is from Luleå, which is like there in the North Pole. It was minus 35 degrees or something. It was winter, and came back from there from celebrating Christmas, came home. I opened my email because I had been isolated completely. And then I opened the email and I see two emails. And the first one is from Google and the other one is from Microsoft. And I was like, what the fuck? So I was like, what? How did this happen? So how did this happen? One of the email from Google was somebody had seen my profile on LinkedIn and they thought I was interesting for a position. It was technical solution consultant in Stockholm. And then they wanted me to, if I was interested, start the interview process. And then the other one was from Moyen, the game development company that does Minecraft. So then I was like, okay. I mean, I was just doing my thing. I was just planning. I was going to speak at a conference in end of June or beginning of February. I think I was writing JavaScript and C probably at the time as well. The never-ending book. And all of a sudden I get this, completely unexpected. But I said, let's do it. That's how it went. And then I went through the interview process. I never thought that it would amount to anything. But, it was just, let's do it. I don't have anything to lose. I'm just going to do my best. And we will see what happens. And then I started going through the interviews and like passing interviews. And then I got the offer. And I was like, what? How did this happen? And then I started working at Google.
Just one sort of specific question. This has actually come up a couple of times with people I've interviewed, but how many interviews did you have? If you
Oh, that was.
I know there's a lot.
Yeah, it was. I don't remember exactly, but it could be 8. If we count the phone interview, it was like it was. I don't know if grueling, but it was long and arduous. The thing is that, you're doing this while you have a job. So, I mean, it's like you have your job, you have your life, and then on top of that, you need to prepare for the interviews, particularly because, I mean, if you work as a software engineer, chances are that you don't rely on computer sciencey stuff.
Yeah, that's it.
You don't use the standard libraries. You don't implement algorithms at a low level. You don't do graphs. You just build applications. So those things, you really need to refresh them. In my case, I didn't do computer science, so even though I really enjoy computer science and all these things, but it's just hard to find time to do it. So it was, yes, you need to prepare a lot. And then you need to be on for the interviews. So
yeah, thanks for sharing that. So you mentioned side projects in your book, Javascript Nancy, the never-ending book, and so I'd like to move on to that in the next part of the interview. But before that, I've got one specific question. I grew up in a place where it goes to minus 35 or minus 45 Celsius in the winter. You grew up in beautiful northern Spain.
Yeah.
What was your first winter in Sweden like?
Oh my God. I used to smoke then. So imagine going out for a smoke at minus 35. That was tough. But yeah, I mean, you get accustomed to it. I think that the problem, the cold is not as big of a problem as the darkness. So, it's like, we're very north. So I mean, but that probably. So in the winter is like never ending winter and never ending darkness. And that can be tough. Also, like you miss the sun. And then in the summer is like never ending sun. But no, I think that's easier to deal with though.
Yeah, it's interesting. I used to smoke myself and occasionally crack and have one from time to time now, and I do remember, the times when I felt most like an idiot were when I had to do something very physical and when I had to go outside in minus 35 to have my cigarette.
In Sweden, they're very good. Sweden has moved forward and people don't smoke. And if you smoke, because you're the only person that does it, you feel a little bit like a pariah. So it's like every time that I would go out for a smoke, it was like the walk of shame. It was the walk of shame out and the walk of shame in. And because I was the only one doing it. So it's good. It's good that they do that they don't smoke.
Yeah. It's a very enjoyable activity in many ways, but it has bad effects in the long run, and we all know that now, thankfully. So moving on to the next part of the interview. So I said you mentioned side projects. I wanted to ask you where you got the idea for Barbarian Meets Coding.
Oh yeah, so that was I think that when I started like getting very much into development, I think like I had like two big inspirations. One was Scott Hanselman, and the other one was Rob Connery, and both of them had blogs. And I think those 7 months of looking for work, I wasn't idle. I was learning a lot about coding, and as I was learning, I was thinking I should start a blog. And then one day I was smoking outside, and I started reflecting I'm gonna do this blog. How am I gonna call this blog? I don't know. I started like brainstorming different names, and I think that there was this other blogger that I really, really liked. He was like I don't remember his name, but he was like I think he was like a UX designer, coder, and his blog was called something like Nerd Plus Art. It could be that today even, I don't know. And then I was thinking, I like that that combination. And then I came up with Barbarian meets coding. I don't know out of where, but the idea is that I wanted to do some. I love fantasy and sci-fi, so I've been reading. Yeah, one of my passions is reading books. I've been doing that forever. I used to be super nerdy. I used to play like role-playing games. You know, the ones that D&D and vampire and werewolf that you act. People are talking through an adventure, and so that's what. Yeah, I've always been into fantasy, and then I was thinking, okay, let's mix two of my passions, which are fantasy and coding. And I always like to put like themes in my talks and in my articles because I think that it's more fun if you have like a theme that you can piggyback on and like to tell a story. So that's how Barbarian meets coding came to be. I remember one of the happiest memories of my childhood is watching Conan the Barbarian with my uncle. My uncle was like a big role model for me. And I used to spend all the time with him, and then we would watch Conan the Barbarian and Conan the Destroyer. We watched those movies. I mean, I don't know how many times. Like, yeah. So Arnold Schwarzenegger as Conan the Barbarian. That was awesome. So yeah, so mixing that. That's how I came up with Barbarian meets coding.
And how did you come up with the name, the handle Vintheras, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, that you use on GitHub and Twitter and things like that?
Yeah, in my head it was. So it's in my head I usually say Vintaras. Because I'm Spanish, and then you pronounce everything not like that. We don't pronounce the H. And then this was like when you read fantasy in Spanish, then everything sounds Spanish. So this was like it was funny. So in university, after 3 years of not having a computer, I got myself a computer, and I was there in the middle of the living room. We stole a table from a cafe. We brought it home, and I put the computer there. And then it was like a very old computer. You couldn't play any game, any modern game. So I don't know how I found out about this, but I started playing a multi-user dungeon. I'm mad. And basically, that's like a text adventure. On like an MMORPG, but it's like in text. So it's like a chat meets game meets text adventure, and it was very funny because it's just basically just letters that are describing a scene, and then you can do actions. It's like terminal based, and then you can create. You basically create a character, and you can customize the terminal to do things faster. You can create macros. You can do a lot of things. It was very funny because every time I used to live with a roommate back then. We became as brothers because we lived together like 6 years. And every time that he would come home, he would make fun of me. He was saying, "Oh, you're playing at the letters. You're playing at the letters again." Like it wasn't a real game. He was like, what are you doing? What are you doing spending so much time with this nonsense? I mean, you should try it. This is so much fun. This is so good. So my character in that universe was a half-elven ranger, protector of a small village near a swamp filled with evil lizard men. And his name was Vintaras. He was the Falcon of the Crepuscle. That was a very poetical name. And then I mean, when I joined all this Twitter and all these things and all, nobody told me about SEO, I think. So yes, it would have been much better to have like Jaime, so people can find me. But yeah, I use Vintaras, and now no one knows who I am. No one can find me. And the funny thing is, I use that. Even on Google, I use that as well. And people always ask me, what is this? I cannot find you within our system.
It's funny, because once you know that's you, though, then it's very easy to find you. And because I searched for it, and like I was like, oh, is this a character from fiction or something like that? And it's like, if you put that name in Google, it's all you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's completely made up.
Yeah, you mentioned themes, and so for your JavaScript Mancy book, for those who might not get it right away, Mancy comes from necromancy or pyromancy, and it's a reference to kind of magic, basically, which is a really cool idea. And so I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what was the motivation behind. And this JavaScript Mancy book, by the way, is hundreds and hundreds of pages. It's an excellent book.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, you're welcome. And it really is. And I wanted to ask you a little bit about. I believe that was your first book. What was the motivation behind starting a project like that and completing it?
Yeah. So I think that. So back then I used to work as a .NET developer, and I did. I think that back in the day I did a lot of how do you call them? Desktop applications, you call them, not web, the opposite of web. And so I did .NET and C#. And then, there's this thing in the .NET community that, and I don't know if, back then it was very pervasive. Today probably it's less pervasive, although I've seen it. But it was that the idea to look down, I think that's how I say it, look down on web development. Like web development, this is not real development. Like this HTML is not it's not really software development. JavaScript is not software development. It's just copy pasting. So there was like this, I don't know. Yeah, it was like this way of looking at web development that was a little bit like, this is not worthy of our consideration. And then as a member of that community, you just suck that feeling or that idea. And then I don't know, people started talking about Node, and I could see excitement around web development and like rich applications. And then I decided to, I'm just gonna put a screen here. I'm just gonna just give it a chance. I'm gonna just start doing some JavaScript, and I'm gonna give it a fair chance. I'm gonna try to understand it. And then the more I started using JavaScript, the more I started enjoying it, and I learned how to do different object-oriented patterns in JavaScript, and then I learned how freeing, like just the idea of having a REPL and being able to so quickly prototype things. It was much less ceremonious than C#. You didn't need so many artifacts to. It was so you could compose different objects with each other, and everything. You could do very awesome things. And through this experience, I realized that JavaScript was a very awesome language. Like it was fun to write, but it was also very powerful. It was a really good language. And then with this knowledge, I remember being at a meetup and people were talking about TypeScript, and every time that there would be an opportunity to bash JavaScript, people would take it. And then I was sitting there in the back of the room and I was thinking like muttering or like thinking, JavaScript is good. No, but the other opinion was so prevalent that I just shut my mouth. And then, so the idea from the book came from this. I just wanted to show people that JavaScript was awesome, which is stupid. If you think about it as a business, it's like to tell people that they are wrong. This could be the worst business that you can imagine. But I just wanted to share like my enthusiasm and like my journey of discovery with other .NET developers, because JavaScript was so much fun to write. It was, it was so good that I wanted just to share it. And then that's where the idea for the book came from. I started writing some articles, and then I thought, I can make this a book. And then I was thinking, because I always like to have themes, I was thinking, my thought process was, okay, JavaScript is thought of like a very obscure language that has like weird behaviors. So then let's compare it to magic. And then, we have, as you say, like different schools of magic, necromancy, pyromancy. So then I will do the play with words that some people get, a lot of people don't get. But yeah, JavaScriptmancy. And then throughout, I was thinking, so cool. So it's going to be a book about learning the arcane art of writing JavaScript. And then as I was thinking more about this fantasy theme, I thought, okay, so I can make a programming book, and then I can mix it somehow with a fantasy book. So I'm going to have like a story inside the book, and all the examples are going to be tied together, and they're going to be like a fantasy story, and the exercises also are going to be part of the story. And then I'm going to have illustrations and like in fantasy books, which, I started like thinking about like awesome ideas, and then some things came to be. Other things I haven't done yet. For instance, all the illustrations. I have like all these ideas, and you visualize these things in your brain, and they look awesome. And then sometimes reality, when your dream meets reality, you realize that perhaps you don't have the ability to do some things. And there's some things that you don't do in the end, or that you postpone. That's something I would really like to illustrate, like the book with like cool fantasy illustrations, but we will see when I get there. And then, I started like writing the book, and writing, and all of a sudden it was like 600 pages, and I realized, and just thinking about how much more I wanted to write. So 600 pages, and I had covered like the basics of JavaScript and part of the object-oriented stuff that I wanted to teach people, because JavaScript has like awesome object-oriented capabilities. I wanted to teach people, this is how you do C# object, like classical inheritance in JavaScript, but then you have all these awesome things that you can do because JavaScript is dynamic. But I was there like 600 pages in, and you have this, because writing a book is like, it's like a marathon. It's very tough as well. And I realized that who is going to read a 1,500 pages book? It's going to be super tough. And then also, I think it would be very tough for me to just continue writing forever without having something finished. And then I thought, what if I break down the book into smaller volumes? Because that's very common in fantasy. You have this long series of books, and that's when I started to like breaking the books down. So then I got like the JavaScript Master Getting Started, and then you have like a 300-page book with introduction to JavaScript, and then you move into OOP, and then you move into functional programming, and then you move into async, and then you go, my idea is like to make like a super long series on JavaScript, and that's how that's it.
And you worked out a very kind of robust process when you were writing that book, I gathered from looking at it. Did you publish it in progress?
Oh yeah. I think I don't remember when I started publishing, but I did publish it very early, because a lot of the things I wrote in my blog, like a very first, what I did was I write an article in my blog, and then I publish it in the book, or I think I did it simultaneously. But the thing is that in the book, in my blog, it was just the article itself, the content of the article, and then in the book, I added the chapter, I extended it, I added the exercises and the story, and then writing the article is like 10%, and then there's another 90% of editing and editing and editing. That takes so much more.
And you had some technical reviewers as well that were
exactly. The process that I could follow. I would use. I was thinking, I can use the TC39 process. That you have these different levels of proposals. So from Strawman to final or something. So then what I would do is I would be writing articles, and I would be writing chapters, and they would be in different levels of maturity based on whether it was just something that I could have just written. Because normally I just write the content super fast without thinking about anything, shape or form. I just content. And then as I go reviewing it and adding exercises, as it gets reviewed by technical reviewers, then it goes maturing. And this was like a signal for the readers to know whether it was safe to read a chapter or not. So if you have like my idea was that, okay, if you really want to learn about the writing process of a book, or you want to get the chapters super early, then you can look at this Strawman chapter that is like very early. But if you don't care about like this initial thing and you just want to see like a mature final version of the article, then you can just wait till you see that this is like reviewed and like finished.
We've already kind of naturally segued into the sort of last sort of part of the interview where we talk about being an author and writing and how you manage that. And I wanted to ask you, how did you find LeanPub, and why did you decide to use us as your platform?
Good question, because this was a lot of years ago. I think, how did I find LeanPub? I don't remember how I found LeanPub. Probably some other author was publishing on LeanPub back then. And then what attracted me was that like LeanPub is like for a software engineer, it's like the perfect way to write a book. I was like, okay, I get to use Markdown, and then I get to push to a Git repo, and then when I push to the Git repo, it automatically generates a preview of the book, and I can publish it as well. It was like that idea of it felt like developing software in a way. So that was like that was like perfect match. Software engineer, writer. This is how it should be. I don't want to be, in a word, like, come on. So, I just use Vim, and I'm working using like the same development tools that I use for working. And then again, I push to GitHub, it gets connected, and I get the output in Dropbox that I can read for review. And it was like the perfect workflow. And then the idea that you can publish as you go and get feedback from your readers and see if it works or not. That was very attractive.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Was getting feedback from readers early important to you? And how did you have a process for incorporating it, or was it like you put your email address in the book and people contact you that way?
Yeah, I think that. Exactly. In the beginning, I just have an email there. It's just contact me on my email or just on Twitter or however you want. And I don't think that I got like a lot of feedback. I guess that, when I started writing JavaScript and C, the first book, I was a completely unknown person. So not a lot of people bought the book or got the book. So the feedback part, although like a good idea in theory, in my case it didn't happen so much. But right now, for instance, for my latest books on Vim, I have I think that when I publish JavaScript and C, sometimes I think I lack the confidence to just say, here is what I'm doing. And owning it. It's like sometimes I feel like I'm hiding. I'm doing it and then I'm hiding and I'm publishing it in my blog, but I don't do a lot of self-promotion, or I'm just like, because you have everybody struggles with self-doubt and all those things. And I think back then I probably was much more, since I didn't do computer science degree, and I started developing like when I was 26, and I always feel like I have these gaps that I should fill. So I think that perhaps now I feel more confident as a developer than before, but back then I was much more shyer about self-promotion. So I would just develop this book on my own in a hidden way. But now with the latest books, I've been more like vocal, reaching out to the community, asking for feedback, asking for reviewers. And I've got for the Wizards Use Vim book, I got some people contacting me through Twitter DMs and it's providing feedback in the very early stages. So that's nice.
And the last question I always like to ask people in these interviews is, if there was one thing we could build for you or one thing we could fix for you on LeanPub, and we would do it, what would you ask us to do?
Good question. Um, Probably, I mean, I don't know how you would do it, but I've always envisioned like these books. I would love to. That's something that, I always like. The sky is the limit. When I'm visualizing things in my head, they all look like super awesome. And then when it meets reality, I have to settle because of time constraints or because I want. Yeah, sometimes it's just better good and done. People can enjoy it than perfect. But I have always envisioned like these books. Like I would love to be able to design like beautiful. I'm always like, one of my goals with everything that I do is to delight. Like people, like they would open that book and I would be like, what? And then you're reading and you're enjoying like every paragraph and every sentence, and it's like, oh my God, this is the best thing I've ever read. So right now I can do that with text. I don't know if I get there. That's my aspiration. But I would love to be able to like have like very strong visuals in the design of the book. So we're talking about like layout, beautiful layout, colors, illustrations. So being able to customize the output, the PDF output, for instance, that would be very cool. The thing is that I have never done like typesetting or anything like that. So I don't know. I know that you can use InDesign for that or something, but it's something that I've always wanted to do with these books, but I've never gotten there yet. So that's something I would like to do, but I don't even know how you could implement it in Markdown. I know that you're working on something called Markua, but I don't know if it supports something like that, like being able to customize the output.
Yeah, thanks very much for that. It's something that we've thought about a lot. As you mentioned, we do have an InDesign output export feature, so that when a book is done, someone can then export what they've written in sort of Leanpub flavored Markdown or in Markua, and then, or using one of our writing modes, and then they can take it and they can either themselves or give it to a professional to do all the super fancy things about kerning and things like that.
Yeah.
For us, it's always been, there are just things that we try to keep in balance. Like, for example, one of our mantras is that, slightly tongue-in-cheek, but it's that when you're writing, formatting is a form of procrastination. And we all know what it's like. I was just watching a Family Guy episode last night where the dog, the running joke is that the dog is a writer, but he never writes anything. And the joke in the episode I watched last night was that he spent all day just moving the margins around in basically in Word, but in an empty document. And that's just kind of an extreme example of how formatting can be problematic. And also, when you are writing the way Leanpub books are typically written in plain text, it can become, how many different knobs do you want to give people to tweak? Then all of a sudden your manual is 1,000 pages. Things like that is tricky as well.
I think that right now, the way that is right now, the workflow for writing is very good. So thank you, and awesome, Joe.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you.
I really love it.
Yeah,
it's like perfect.
Oh, thank you for that. And the other issue is that in the ebook world, there are these like super interactive books and things like that. But generally speaking, if you're writing a book and it's going to end up in ebook format, particularly in Leanpub, we like it to be in multiple formats. So you can get it in PDF, EPUB, Mobi, and reading online.
Yeah.
For example, in things like Kindle or or books in Apple, people can do things like change fonts. They can change the the sizes of the characters and things like that. And all of a sudden, formatting. Like, it's really important in PDF output. It's really important in everything, right? But at the same time, if there's this interesting thing where when the reader can change settings, then it makes super precise formatting kind of a little bit. It's not necessarily exactly what you're going for in all cases when you want to reach a really wide audience through this particular format. So while we take formatting really, really seriously, and we understand how serious it is, particularly for certain types of projects, it is always a bit of a balancing act. But we appreciate getting nudged.
Yeah, I think that it's more like, it would be more like in the case of print, like because I use EPUB and I use because I publish in the Kindle store. So that's Mobi, actually. So, and I've enjoyed a lot, like reading my book. That was like a great way to review the book. So reading my book on Kindle, it made it like that was the first time that I was reading the book, and it was like such an awesome feeling, because it really felt like a book. It felt like I'm reading a real book here, but I wrote it, but it's a real book. And then when I got it in print, through Amazon, that was also very awesome.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I mean, every author, self-published or sort of publisher published, when you get that copy in your hands and you see your name, it's magical.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time to do this interview. I really appreciate it. Time out of your evening, and thank you very much for being a Lean Pub author.
Thank you very much. I really love your service. Keep kicking ass.
Thanks. So I just realized I forgot to ask you about paternity leave.
Oh yeah, no worries.
Do you have a few minutes to talk about that?
Oh yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So people listening closely may have heard there was a baby in the background earlier on, and so congratulations to you and your wife.
Thank you.
Coincidentally, I've interviewed a couple of people since then, but the last podcast that we published was with a woman named Sarah K. Peck, whose startup is called Startup Pregnant, and we spent a lot of time in that interview talking about taking leave around the time of the birth of a child. And I wanted to ask you, so I gathered from Twitter that you've been on leave for 8 months.
Yeah.
Is that a typical amount of time for people in Sweden?
Yeah, I think that's like a very common thing in Sweden. So I mean, this is crazy. I come from Spain. The parent, the dad, used to get like 2 weeks. I think now they have extended it to 4 or something like that. So I mean, this also for me is like, it's crazy. But in Sweden, there is 480 days of maternity, of leave.
Parental leave.
Parental leave for that you share between the mom and the dad. And then the way that it works is that, there's this, Sweden is very strong on equality, gender equality. So they make you, at least each one of the members of the couple has to get 3 months. That's like the minimum. And then you divide it as you want. But normally people usually divide it equally. So then that's my wife was on maternity leave for a little bit longer, perhaps, I don't know if it was like 11 months or something like that. And then I was on parental leave for like 8 months, and there's still days left. So that I think we still can get like a month more of parental leave. I mean, it's crazy.
And what was your biggest surprise? I mean, I don't know if I believe this is your second child, so maybe you've gone through this before, but
no, this is my first.
Oh, okay. Oh, it is. Okay. And so, what was your biggest surprise becoming a dad and having this time on your hands? I mean, well, maybe you didn't, but.
And the biggest surprise, I think that I have a lot of opinions here. So the biggest surprise, I think that the modern societies, we have, I think, so how do I put this? So in modern societies, I think it's very common to live very independently from your family. And in my case, so my wife and I are like a unit of 2 people. My family is in Spain, and her family is in the north of Sweden. And so human beings, we're not designed to take care of a child, only 2 people. I think that we're designed to grow and to take care of children like as a tribe. So the surprise was that any comment, any idea that I had about how tough it was to have a child before having a child paled in comparison with reality. It's incredibly tough. It was funny because, I mean, as amazing as an experience it is, as happy as you are, it was funny because I was the first 2 months I was with my wife, helping her throughout the pregnancy and the first months. And then I came back to work, And even though I would vent with my colleagues a lot. So it was funny because, I mean, having a child is also I love him to death and he's the sweetest thing. But then I would always talk about how tough it was in very excruciating detail. So that was one of the biggest surprises, is how tough it is to take care of a child. I think that it's a big shock because my family, we didn't have any baby around that I could practice with as I grew up. So then you don't know how to take care of a child or like be around a child or anything. And then, you have the baby, you go through the pregnancy, and they just give you the child. And then they say, here you have a baby. It's yours. And then they leave. And there you are, like, with this baby in your arms. And it's like, okay, what do I do now? And then the baby starts crying. And then it goes down from there. So they're very, very, like very, I think I wrote it, I think the best way to put it, I wrote it in an article in my blog, was that the baby breaks you down physically and mentally. It destroys you. And then he just rebuilds you into someone that can take care of him. So he destroys you. You're going to be destroyed, tired, exhausted. You're going to get to the limit, and then you're going to find a new limit, and then you're going to find a new limit. and then it goes from like survival mode, and then slowly you start rebuilding yourself and gaining confidence as a parent and having more patience and being able to sleep. I mean, he also develops and becomes like more stable. But yeah, it's an amazing experience. You grow a lot. You grow in the relationship as well, because you've never been in such an extreme situation with your wife or partner. So you develop a lot like that as well. And then, through that, I discovered to be extremely appreciative and of my own time. Like, you get like I've never been as productive as before. Like now, before if I would have some time, I would like do like the Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, autopilot route, blogs, RSS, like, okay, I'm going to do some writing. And then like 45 minutes later, I'm trapped in Twitter still, like for the fourth time. And now it's like, if I have some time, I just do whatever. So much more productive. Because you don't have, there's no time. You don't have any time. It's like crazy. And then for the past 8 months, it's been amazing to be able to have like all the time to be with my son and get to know each other. I'm like really well. But then it's like very tough because you don't have any time for yourself. You're just taking care of a person that can't do anything, that can't survive without you. And that's basically, you lose yourself a little bit. So continue writing the books and doing like my own side projects is like a lifeline to not lose yourself. And sometimes you have to choose, do I sleep because I'm so tired and exhausted? Or do I do something for myself? And then I will be tired, but at least I feel like I have, you have to pay yourself also. So yeah, they make me amazing, but tough.
Yeah, thanks very much for sharing that. And as always, thanks to all of you for listening to this episode of the Front Matter podcast. If you like what you heard, please rate and review us on iTunes or wherever you found this podcast. And if you'd like to become a LeanPub author, please visit our website at leanpub.com.